All right, let's jump into some Superman talk / DC talk / Brian Michael Bendis. We have one of the biggest Brian Michael Bendis fans on the show right now.
Ooh.
Come on, Ryan. You know you are.
I guess that's a fair statement.
Who's your favorite writer?
Bendis?
Oh, hot damn. Welcome to the club. Thanks. This is going to be good.
Okay.
I guess.
Okay, well, this conversation is starting because we're hearing rumors that Brian Michael Bendis is just straight up pulling out of Superman, right? He's just going to end it. He's done. He's tired of people complaining, right?
That was a little bit of semi-breaking news in the past couple of weeks that he's announced that he will be leaving the Superman and Action Comics titles.
Yeah, if you take it out of context and you just say, yeah.
Read the headlines and don't listen to, research.
Based off of what I heard him say, it sounds like he's not ending it anytime soon. And it sounds like it's ending because of his own volition. Like he wants it to, there's going to be a time where he's going to pass the torch.
He's not just like Robert Kirkmaning it and just running out the back door real quick.
I don't think so.
I hope not, because I'm enjoying those runs.
The reason why I'm bringing this up now is because Brian Michael Bendis has been over at DC for nearly 2 years now. And what he's doing over there is being critiqued to all hell. I'm seeing a ton of complaints about his time on Action Comics, a ton of complaints about his time at Superman. And, people saying, why would they come over here and change stories? And I want to discuss that, but in a larger sense, I want to talk about his entry to DC Comics and what this gentleman has done.
Yeah, there's a lot to break down there, if you ask me.
Ryan, let's start this conversation off with Superman, his time at Action Comics. What's the complaints? Why are people upset? Because we're going to then move to a bigger conversation of what I think is what needs to be focused on, which is his success over at DC and what this gentleman is doing.
So to kind of get to where people's opinions are coming in, to get where people are upset with the current run of Superman, you have to look at what was right before Brian Michael Bendis took over, which was the Peter J. Tomasi run, where he had kind of built a family unit with Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and their son, John Kent, Jonathan. He's been hanging out with like Damian Wayne. They're both like 10, 11 years old. They're
you remember
kids.
like those Super Sons and all that? It was a good time for Superman readers from, I'm not a huge Superman guy, but what I do know is that I haven't wanted to read Superman for quite some time. Action Comics, New 52, really in general, kind of ruined it for me. So seeing that he's become a family man, I think like many other Superman fans, they saw something new. They saw something that intrigued them. It wasn't just about him possibly losing his identity. It wasn't just about his relationship stuff. No, he's got a family unit now.
Right. And then when Bendis came on, he had Jonathan Kent leave planet Earth with his grandfather, Jor-El, like Superman's father. They both just left the galaxy and went on like a bunch of space adventures. And a few issues later, Jonathan Kent comes back, but he is 17 years old.
Okay, so all of a sudden, we have what was a story people were really pumped about that, and when I say really, it's like the bar's pretty low in my opinion. Like right. Superman is, hey, you're getting people into Superman and they really like it. That's cool. But I'm not talking like this was blowing the waters out. Like this wasn't breaking records or something.
Sure. I consider myself a fan of Superman, but I don't think he's as popular as like Batman, obviously. There's different tiers there. But people were upset that they thought that Brian Michael Bendis came in and just ruined this whole family dynamic that people were liking with Lois and Clark and 11-year-old Jonathan Kent.
Dude, they completely changed it. I mean, he went into the title and saw what was built and then did something completely different. We kind of have a different type of Lois Lane here. We have a slightly different Clark Kent, even. And we have, as you mentioned, his son that we were watching grow up, essentially skip his adolescence so that he can be brought back as an older teenager.
That's actually a big part of the story is you get in Superman's head and he's extremely frustrated that he has missed his own son growing up. He missed out on his kid's childhood, so he has a lot of rage bottled up against his own father. And I think that's a cool thing. I think that adds a lot of conflict, generational family conflict to the story. And I liked having that sort of conflict in there. And I think also, if you think about it in the long term, when Brian Michael Bendis came over to DC, he had this plan to reconstitute the Legion of superheroes, and he wanted Superboy, Jonathan Kent, to play a big part in that. And I think that is a part of the reason why he was aged up.
Ooh, okay. Well, now we're getting into his ambitions beyond the title, and that's actually where we want to begin this conversation, really, because he started out in the comic game a while ago. Okay. Actually, I want to show this book up here. It's Quivers #1. This is a independent book. It's a $5 book. And it's the first time Brian Michael Bendis ever wrote something for comics. And I don't know if you knew this, but he used to draw too. And he drew the interiors and the cover of this book.
Yeah, a lot of his early like crime comics and stuff, for example, he was drawing.
And then take a look at this. Batman Chronicles issue number 21. This is the first DC published work by Brian Michael Bendis. The reason why I want to show this comic, and both of these are cheap books, by the way, this would be the last time he would do work at DC for 2 decades. All right? I think it's like nearly 2 decades.
Sure.
And that matters because what did he do in those 2 decades?
In those 2 decades, he was kind of, in my humble opinion, he was kind of setting the bar over at Marvel Comics for a lot of the things that we are currently enjoying today.
Like changing comics forever?
I would suggest so. Disassembling the Avengers.
Ultimate Universe,
Right.
Sis, Fantastic
Exactly.
Four, Miles Morales, Jessica Jones. Do we need to say more?
You could. There's a lot more you could say because he has had a massive effect on this whole in this whole universe.
Who else?
The New Avengers, one of my favorite comic runs of all time. That's a big one. Secret Invasion, one of my favorite events of all time. My favorite era of Marvel Comics, I would say, is the 2000 to like 2010-ish.
That's
That
right.
whole
This
decade.
is like when I was getting into reading heavily, you know? So
Yeah.
it's important to note that because that's what he did at Marvel. He created the universe. He formed a lot of the characters that we love. And these IPs are going crazy now. So when DC got him, you know that this wasn't just a, hey, let's just bring him over here to give him Superman. Let's just have him do Superman.
Yeah, let him write Superman. Maybe Action Comics. We'll give him a couple comic books.
You don't just go and poach one of the biggest writers from your competition. You
Put
know,
him in the corner to do 1 or 2 titles and let him, just wither away and die in the corner.
mind you, over this last 3 years, all we're hearing is about how much DC's struggling, how many titles that they're constantly cutting, and how many times they're rebooting things. Can we do a new Crisis? Can we get more new readers? Do we have to do new #1s? Like, what variants do we need to sell at cover price and pay to order? Like, that's the kind of stuff that DC did. They brought Brian Michael Bendis back after 2 decades. Not just to make one comic. No, they want him to do what we did at Marvel.
Is grow a whole ecosystem of like interconnecting stories.
So let's chat about these last 2 years. What has this gentleman done? Because he's started to do so much. I mean, he took 2 decades at Marvel to do this, and then he comes over to DC for 2 years. And it's crazy.
Yeah, it started with Superman. He was on Superman, he was on Action Comics, and I think the 2 of those comics interplay very well with each other. You have more of the intergalactic combat, like all of Superman's rogue gallery and just a bunch of crazy high concept stuff happening over in the Superman title. My favorite, though, is Action Comics, where it is more grounded. It's focusing on like Clark Kent as a reporter at the Daily Planet and all the things that are happening over there.
Let's chat about Action Comics 1001. And a lot of these covers that we're going to talk about, these ones are all super affordable. Some of them are spec, and we'll get into that. But many of them are cover price. But Action 1001 features a new villain.
They're also Fire Guy recommended, if that means anything to anybody.
Oh, yeah. You've read all of this stuff. I've read
love
most of
Action
these.
Comics.
So we have the first appearance of the Red Cloud. How dope of a character design was this?
I really like her. Well, spoiler alert. There's when you start reading Action Comics, it's a mystery as to who this character is, but it gets revealed relatively quickly
That's right.
who she is. And she is a red cloud, as the name implies. She is kind of like an amorphous, gaseous villain that Superman has trouble fighting because you can't punch her, you can't hit her, you can't fight. So it's a struggle, and she's part of the Invisible Mafia, which is like the arc of the first arc of Action Comics.
Ooh, why don't we get into that? Tell us about this first arc and some of the things as a Bendis fan that you're digging.
I'm also just a crime fan, so anytime the word mafia gets thrown around, I'm like, okay,
mobster movies, you're all over that kind of stuff.
I'm into it. So it's a group of criminals, a mafia, if you will, in Metropolis, who are trying to figure out how to run a criminal enterprise in Superman's city, where he can hear and see everything that's happening all the time. So they meet inside of like a lead tube underground. They don't say Superman or Kryptonite or Lois Lane or any of like the magical buzzwords that he's always listening for. And so they use this girl, the Red Cloud, and the whole first arc is about Superman, Red Cloud, Invisible Mafia, all the weird stuff that's happening with the Daily Planet, and it's not what you think when you're getting into when you get into Superman comics. There's not a lot of laser vision happening or flying around and like punching stuff, which I'm not the biggest fan of.
Some of the things I don't like about Superman is just as you described. He's like overpowered. You kind of always know what's going to happen. You know that there's going to be someone he can't fight because of something simple like a rock, or his identity is going to get,
Exactly.
Something's going to happen like that. But in this case, you have a new character, great character design, and you have a antagonist that actually can rival Superman in a way that's kind of believable.
There's scenes where Superman and the Red Cloud are getting into it, and they fight each other, and he can't win, so they just break off. And she goes back to the Invisible Mafia, and they're like, "Hey, I just fought Superman, and I'm alive still." And so everyone's like, "Oh, good job! Like, we're doing this, we're figuring it out." And it's like not that high of a bar to reach. Like, I didn't die fighting Superman, or I didn't get arrested. It's interesting stuff.
All right. Any other things from Superman? Any takeaways that you're kind of excited about? I mean, I want to hear more about this time that has been sped up from Jonathan Kent. Right. I want to hear about Jor-El.
It makes sense if you think about it. Like, it makes sense. You like Stephen Hawking, right? You hear
Absolutely.
about black holes and time vortexes and stuff. So when Jonathan Kent goes into space, he gets into a bunch of weird. He goes out of the galaxy, and so I'm not a physicist or a space expert by any means, but time gets a little wobbly out in the greater universe. So for Jonathan Kent, like 6 years or so have passed, while on planet Earth it's only been like 3 weeks.
Right.
So they are just barely kind of even missing their kid. He's only been gone for a little while, but
got some interstellar kind of stuff going on here.
Trippy. He comes back and he's old. He's almost a full-grown adult. So it's stressful as a fan and as a character in the story. You're confused, and you're a little off guard.
Another thing that people were complaining about is this whole identity reveal.
Yeah, Superman reveals his identity to the world in issue 18 of Superman.
But he's done this so many times.
It's happened a lot, more than I was aware of.
But people are upset about it.
It gets into something that I don't know. Comic fans, sometimes, I love you guys. Sometimes I get a little irritated because I think as a comic reader, if there's something going on in the current run that you don't like, then, eventually somebody else is going to take over the title, eventually. And things will go, usually, back to normal. Like, I can't imagine the world will know Clark Kent is Superman forever.
That's literally one of the main tropes in Superman's legacy as canon, is that whatever the situation may be, it looks like it's going to be an end all. Oh my goodness, there's no way that he's going to come out of this one. There's some neat way that they figure it out. Whether they, he fools people, he hypnotizes them,
I remember in Civil War when Spider-Man reveals his identity to the world, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Peter Parker, I'm Spider-Man." And then, less than, I don't know, so it was a few years later.
It was pretty damn quick.
Yeah, you had one more day, and the whole stuff with Mephisto, and it wasn't executed as well as it could have been, but everyone kind of got their minds, reset, and nobody knew who Peter Parker was anymore, and it wasn't as clean as it possibly could have been, but things reset back to normal. And that's one of the the foundational things of comics. There's a status quo.
Status quo, but you know what? If you got to retcon, if you got to change something, you also can utilize the fact that you're writing a comic book to make it happen. You just make it happen so that you get a clean slate and you can do what you want.
That's part of the fun, is seeing what a new writer does when they take over the title.
When I enter a new title and there's a new writer, one of the first things I do is I kind of put a pause from the rest of the stuff that I read, and I kind of separate that. And I think, yeah, okay, that's one writer, that's one team that did this work. Now, granted, there's going to be some things to connect. There's some, canon, there's some consistencies that we want to see, but by the end of it all, I'm looking at this next run as its own thing. This is Brian Michael Bendis, and I'm willing to kind of let go a lot, as I do with a lot of comic books, to just listen to the story.
It actually reminds me of back when Mr. Bendis was at Marvel and he was writing Daredevil. His whole run on Daredevil ended up with Matt Murdock in jail. And then he passed it off, I believe, to Ed Brubaker was next. And he's like, "Here you go. You got Daredevil in prison. Have fun." And then you have to watch Ed Brubaker kind of figure out what to do with the status quo that he was given. And that's kind of the fun of comics, is seeing how each new writer adapts to things that were done before them.
Sometimes you goldball it. Right?
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you got Jonathan Hickman and he's sourcing stuff and he's just making everybody happy because you know what? The run is so good. And yeah, it could seem absurd. Maybe the balls are eggs, right? Okay, sometimes
Bendis
it's cool.
Make gold balls?
Oh, didn't
right?
he? I think he did, actually. So I'm just patience, it's okay. I'm not too worried, man, because you know what? Bendis is doing a lot more than just Superman over there. And I want to get into that because let's talk about Naomi now. Because when we're talking about like characters on the scene, heck, he was on a late night show talking about Naomi.
That's
all right.
true.
He was like posting and being so gracious and filled with so much gratitude to the community for bringing Naomi to the masses because the community loved it. The comic market was enthused by this new character coming on the scene. Issue number 1 hitting upwards of $400 to $500 at 9.8 within months.
I don't want to say I called it because I'm a Bendis fan, so I was going to get Naomi regardless. I was looking at it like, oh, this is a comic about like a teenage girl and she's like figuring out something about like being adopted or whatever. I was confused, but I'm like, I'll try it. I'll get on it.
This is a superhero comic, but it's not. There's like only a couple pages spread, and it's like like you're reading this and you're finding out that this is more of a mystery and an origin story than anything else. And Naomi came on the scene so hot.
Yeah.
But over like a year, kind of waiting as her origin story was told, the market adjusted, numbers moved really quick, but now we're actually seeing kind of a resurgence a little bit because we can stand back now after 2 years and see what this gentleman is doing. He's creating a whole new world. He's creating new characters. And if we're going to look at these characters like for potential speculation long-term, is there reason to buy variants? Is there reason to be speccing on third prints? Things like that. Those type of questions that we all think about. Well, we got to go to the successes. So let's look at Naomi. Naomi number 1. We saw a $60 sale for a near mint copy on the 15th of June.
That's recent.
Very recent. Would you even expect that at this point? There was a $20 book at one point this last year.
Yeah, Naomi, it started January of 2019, so it's been quite a while.
Absolutely.
And that was just a 6-issue miniseries, and then she was kind of off the radar for a while, but she did pop up in Action Comics for a little bit after that. Like issue 1014 of Action Comics, she showed up, and Superman kind of helped her figure out, get her powers figured out and kind of teach her some stuff. And
absolutely.
She eventually joined up with Young Justice, which is another series that Mr. Bendis is writing over at DC.
So I'm looking at a couple of possible comic books to, be watching. I'm watching a handful of things, and Naomi is one of them. All right. Like I mentioned, number 1, let's take a look at the book you just mentioned, Action Comics 1014. This is the first crossover of Naomi into this title. And that's a big deal, especially since it's a $4 book right now. All right. Let's take a look at some of the other Naomi comic books that are on this list that are spec worthy.
So in the first issue of Naomi, you had the second print, which has like a red color scheme to it. It was going for $40 and a 9.8.
$40 for a 9.8 is respectable. I mean, that would put this value of the second print around the $10 to $15 mark, and it's definitely not the one that a lot of people are grading.
Yeah, I don't think people are looking at that one. They had the B cover of Naomi number 1 with her in front of a locker at school with a bunch of Superman paraphernalia.
That's right. That was a $25 issue. And who did that cover?
It was Emmanuel Lupacchino.
Great book. And we're also seeing the third prints now. This is not being spec'd on in the market from what I can see. This is lower print than the others. However, it is black and white, and they're going for like $5 now.
It'd be kind of cool.
I think that's cool, man.
I'm the kind of person who, if I like Naomi, I have to find all of those variants, all of those different printings of the first one. I don't think I have that black and white one, but I have all the other ones.
Well, dude, back when Naomi was hitting, we were seeing issue 2, issue 3, issue 4 popping. And I'm talking like out the gate going for double cover price. Issue number 2, we're still seeing high sales of $15 to $20. But here's the thing. As the rest of the issues progress, I mean, there was only this 6-issue miniseries. None of the rest of the issues are really selling for more than cover, but we have so many other appearances of Naomi that are noteworthy that I guess we got to bring it up on the mic because I'm watching it. So yeah, in number 2, we had the partial origin, but in issue number 5, we see the first time Naomi is featured in costume. This is a $1 to $5 book.
I remember at the time too, when there was her costume and it had this logo on it. And at the time, it was like an unknown, mysterious logo, but it looked a lot like the White Lantern symbol. And there was a lot of spec at the time that maybe there was going to be some White Lantern stuff. And I remember Brightest Day just started to creep up on your list there for a while. And it was the first time that I was kind of in the middle of like the spec game.
How'd you feel with that, man? Because like of all the characters to bring in to make her a possible Lantern? You must have gotten excited.
I was very excited. I went back and started reading all my old Jeff Johns Green Lantern stuff. Just that's me too. I love
your
that.
favorite, man.
Oh yeah.
Well, then issue number 6, we see a villain that is only really there for the first and possibly the last time, maybe a transitional type of character. But this Zumbado.
Yeah, they're teasing a Naomi season 2, like this first 6-issue miniseries. There's been some hints dropped that they're coming back to Naomi, and I think this Zumbado fellow is going to make more appearances further down the line in Naomi's standalone comic book.
An antagonist that's being introduced to this run, and a run that is being watched by so many, seeing the first villain kind of just pop up into number 6 and no one really care about. Again, we're talking about spec-worthy things. And if Naomi is spec-worthy, there's not that many comics that go along with her. You mentioned that Young Justice, issue number 10, features her joining the team.
Right.
So this isn't the only thing that Bendis is doing. It's not just making new characters, making new villains, taking on the responsibility of Superman in Action Comics. We're talking now Legion of Superheroes.
We are.
What? How do you... How of all the... Okay, here's the thing. Like, let's give props where props is due. That is the one title that if I was well-versed, like if I was even more well-versed, like I'm talking encyclopedia well-versed in DC Comics, I would still not want to touch that title.
I would think long and hard before agreeing to write a book like that, because there's like 30 heroes in Legion. Like, that's a lot. You're not just signing on to write Superman, like 1 or 2 guys. It's a cast of characters in that book.
From the future that has a die-hard reader fandom.
Yes.
Like, more
true.
than many.
I took the plunge on Legion when Bendis took over.
Oh, jeez. And you made it out alive?
I made it out alive.
Okay, that's good.
It's a lot there, and I went in totally cold. I've never read a Legion comic book before.
Dude, in preparation for Brian Michael Bendis taking on this title, I looked up Legion of Superheroes. I took on the Great Darkness Saga, which is said to be one of the best stories of Legion of Superheroes. And it's one of those situations where every page, I was like, I have no freaking clue what's going on.
There's a lot there. It's heavy.
There's like every other character's talking. I don't know who anyone is. They're referencing stuff I don't know. There's relationship dynamics that seem important that I don't understand. And to think that he came on the scene and was like, oh, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to take on Superman. We're going to create all these new characters, and Legion of Superheroes is where it's at. Man, that takes a lot of courage.
I imagine they kind of went to him. I don't know how this went down, obviously, but I imagine they went up to him and said, like, what would you like to work on? And he goes, Legion, let's bring that comic back. And he did, and he's doing really good at it. I mean, it's a cool read. I just need a lot more tutorial level stuff. I need like a Legion 101, like a primer.
Well, there was a character throughout this process that has come out and that has kind of caused a stir, getting people excited about another Lantern. Dude, he's getting people into Lantern stuff, dude.
I'm Brian Michael Bendis and Lantern stuff. Like,
ooh, that's good to me, man.
I'm a happy camper over
Okay,
here.
so now we're talking about the Gold Lantern. And this is a conversation that's going to get fun with the community because we got to bring up the benchmark again. Do you remember the benchmark conversation, my brother?
Oh, goodness. Are we talking like cameos? Are we talking full appearances and first? I love this.
Okay, so we have cameo, first appearance benchmark. It's Logan, Hulk 180, Hulk 181. Chalen, throw that on the screen again for me.
I can't get away from this. I can't get away from this.
It doesn't end.
No.
It doesn't end. And I'm not going to, dude, I won't let it end because we need to cement this. We need to make this known. Everyone needs to follow suit, man, because it's not changing. That's the benchmark, whether you like it or not. And some members of the community kind of get a little heated about this cameo talk. Like, we don't even need it. Well, let's get into why you need the cameo talk, okay? Because we're talking about the Gold Lantern. And this guy has 7 cameos.
So he's had 7 cameos, and right now, in like issue 6, is when you're getting like some full appearance action from the Gold Lantern.
So this would be equivalent to the 181 appearance, right? We have Legion of Superheroes, issue number 6, cover A, and you have a page spread that introduces him as the Gold Lantern. You see both of the power rings. Like, this is a debut in full of this character. And the market responded to this comic as such. This book out the gate went for more than double cover price.
Ooh.
All right. But let's go back, because there's 7 other appearances that we need to talk about, because this character made its waves, man. When we have one character of many, Bendis, we talked about a bunch of them that he created, but when you have one that makes its impact on the market in the way it has, we need to look at everything. And I want to bring it back to Superman issue number 14. And I'll remind you that Superman issue 14 was a recalled comic from last year. Rumors that this book had color mistakes on the inside, possibly just the wrong trade dress, who knows? But because it was recalled and because we see a cameo appearance, the first cameo appearance of the Gold Lantern, ooh, it's like both Power Rangers.
Perfect storm, man.
Let's do it, man.
So in issue 14, you had the Legion as a group coming to the present day from the year 3000 something and recruiting Jonathan Kent to join the Legion. And they show up as a group, and if you look closely, Gold Lantern's kind of just chilling in the back of the, the big spread of, 30 teenagers. He's there. It's hard to see, but he's there. And throughout a lot of these upcoming cameo appearances, that's kind of how you'll see him.
Yes.
Kind of hovering in the back of a lot of group shots of the Legion.
But we're not just talking about one little picture here and there, because that is here. We're going to get into that. But we're talking cover appearances. We're talking word bubbles in one of these comics. So let's keep it going. Supergirl, issue number 33, the second appearance in cameo. Can you spot him, comic fan?
It's like, where's Waldo? Where's the Gold Lantern?
It kind of is. All right. Now let's take a look at Superman 15, a third appearance in cameo. He's there. It's a lot of these group shots, though. The introduction of this new team across multiple titles.
And if you're somebody like me who doesn't know who any of these people are in the first place, it's kind of hard to pinpoint the one guy in the back of this giant group of people and go, oh, that guy's new.
Yeah, we're giving our
They're
editor
all new to me.
Let's give our editors some challenges and make them hunt for these, these Where's Waldo level situations with a circle to help the comic fam out. Because now we're actually going to get into some variants and some kind of random issues here. We have Legion of Superheroes Millennium, cover B, all right? Issue number 1, cover B. Gold Lantern is not in this book. He's not in the interior, and he's not even on cover A, but he's on cover B. This marks his first appearance on a cover.
So the Legion of Superheroes Millennium was like a little 2-issue prologue before the Legion comic book run started. And it doesn't really deal with the group itself. It's kind of, it's a prologue. So he's not on the inside. He's not on the A cover because he's not on the inside, but he's on the variant, the B cover. It has a group shot of everybody. And again, he's just in there, part of the group.
Next on the list is Legion of Superheroes issue number 1, the local comic shop day edition. If you look on the inside of issue number 1, you do indeed have a cameo with a speech bubble.
He talks.
He speaks, man.
Speaks.
All right, so now we're in like that Hulk 180 territory, but it's not a full appearance yet, comic fam. That's not until a little bit later, because we have Legion of Superheroes 3 to talk about, his 6th cameo appearance, because the one on the cover doesn't count because it's not on the inside. But if we're counting covers too, 7th.
So he's in 6 interiors, but if you're including the covers, then you can make it a 7. There's 7.
That's 7 cameos.
7 Gold Lanterns.
That's right. If he's on the cover, to me, that's going to be interesting enough to look at as an appearance of this character. He's making an appearance on the cover.
7 cameos.
7 cameos. And then we end right where we started this list, which is Legion of Superheroes number 6 with the full reveal. 8 different times that the Gold Lantern has been featured in such a short amount of time. And a great example of why these terms matter.
I'm just glad some lanterns are getting some love. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all I need. I'm
Dude,
happy.
Tell me, as a Brian Michael Bendis fan, I want to know, what are your thoughts going forward? What are you keeping an eye out for? What are you reading? What do you think has legs in this community? And he's doing some independent work at DC too.
Yeah, he's got some creator-owned stuff. When he came over to DC, he had 4 Jinx World comics is like a separate like subprint that he's got there with like books like Scarlet and Cover, Pearl.
Yeah, you really like those ones.
Yes, I'm a big fan of like all of those, honestly. And I think Scarlet was one of my favorite comics of the year in 2018 when that came out. And they're talking about, I think Pearl was optioned. They're talking about making new cover issues with Bendis and my favorite artist David Mack. Ooh. So I got my eye on all that stuff.
I think it's important for these creators when they take on this kind of work to also have the opportunity beyond the main publishing company to do some like independent work kind of own their IP and have some potential for bigger things.
It feels like that's where they go to kind of spread their wings and do more creative, more of their own stuff where they don't have to like color in between the lines so much.
Comic fam, what do you think about Brian Michael Bendis over at DC? What do you think about this universe that he's expanding? We're watching it. We're excited about it. We're pumped to see new characters, new villains, and I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below.
I would like to know, actually, as a Bendis person myself, if he is leaving Superman in the near future, is what he said. We don't know exactly when.
Could be months, you know.
Right? Yeah, it sounds like on his own terms. But what do you want to see him do after that? Like I wouldn't mind seeing Bendis take over Green Lantern personally.
Oh, who would have thought Green Lantern?
Exactly. You know, maybe he could bring the Gold Lantern in there for a few more cover appearances, and I don't know. I'd be interested to see what people think would be a cool follow-up character for Bendis to tackle after he's done with Superman, which is kind of like the character at DC.
Let us know in the comment section below.